At first glance, they appear to be statues, frozen in silent meditation. But these figures were once living monks who chose a path almost impossible to imagine today.
At first glance, they appear to be statues, frozen in silent meditation.
But these figures were once living monks who chose a path almost impossible to imagine today. They followed a belief that devotion could push the human body beyond the ordinary limits of life itself.
It was a commitment demanding absolute purity of body and mind, a sacred vow taken with unwavering spirit.
This path was known as Sokushinbutsu, a practice rooted in extreme spiritual discipline. It was based on a belief that the body could be transformed through devotion and suffering. To the modern world, such a belief may seem impossible to accept. But within the tradition, these monks were believed to have transcended death itself. They were not seen as dead, but as beings who remained in eternal meditation.
The story of Sokushinbutsu begins in the sacred mountains of Yamagata.
For centuries, these mountains were believed to connect the human world with the spiritual realm. Pilgrims walked these paths seeking purification, guided by faith and silence.
Many followed a spiritual path known as Shugendō, centered on discipline and endurance.
They believed enlightenment could only be reached by confronting the limits of the body. Each harsh condition was embraced as a step towards liberation, gradually weakening the physical form while strengthening the spirit.
Cold winds, isolation, and hunger were not seen as obstacles on this path.
Instead, they were tools used to break the illusion of the physical self. The body was pushed to its limits, so the mind could become free.
Through suffering, they believed the illusion of the self would begin to dissolve.
And from this belief, a more radical path slowly began to take form.
The journey towards Sokushinbutsu began with years of strict preparation.
The first stage required a severe diet, known as Mokujikigyō.
During this time, monks lived only on what the mountain could provide. Roots, bark, seeds, and pine needles became their only nourishment. Slowly, the body began to change under this relentless discipline.
Over time, the body slowly began to lose all traces of excess strength.
Fat disappeared as the monks continued their disciplined life in the mountains.
Muscle weakened, but the focus of the mind grew sharper each day. This stage of training could continue for nearly 1,000 days.
By the end of this period, the monk had already crossed the limits of ordinary endurance.
After years of discipline, the body had already changed beyond recognition.
The next stage demanded even greater sacrifice, as food became almost non-existent.
The monk withdrew further into isolation, far from any trace of ordinary life.
Yet within this tradition, this was not seen as suffering, but as purification.
With his spirit purified and his body transformed, the monk stood ready to take the final.
The chamber, a sacred crucible, was prepared by fellow monks who understood the gravity of this final, irreversible journey. In the final stage, the monk entered a small stone chamber prepared for meditation.
Inside, there was barely enough room to sit in the posture of meditation.
Each day, he rang a small bell to signal that he was still alive. The soft sound echoed through the temple halls as a sign of endurance.
Day after day, the bell continued to ring, marking the presence of life within the chamber.
Until one day, the sound stopped, and the silence became complete.
When the bell no longer rang, the chamber was carefully sealed. When the chamber was opened again, the result would determine everything.
When the chamber was opened, the monks carefully examined the body within. In rare cases, the body had remained preserved through the years.
When this occurred, the monk was declared Sokushinbutsu.
Within the tradition, he was seen as a Buddha in his own body. From that moment, the monk became an object of reverence.
Today, several Sokushinbutsu remain preserved in temples across northern Japan.
These figures are not displayed as museum artifacts.
Instead, they are treated as sacred presences within the temple.
Visitors still come to offer prayers and quiet respect. Some seek healing, when others simply seek peace.
Today, historians continue to study the meaning behind Sokushinbutsu.
Some scholars see it as an extreme form of religious devotion.
Others interpret it as a radical expression of ascetic discipline.
Within Japanese culture, the practice remains both respected and debated.
The truth of Sokushinbutsu may lie somewhere between faith and history.
Was this the ultimate expression of devotion, or something far more complex? To the modern world, such a path may seem impossible to accept. Yet within the tradition, it may have been seen as an act of sacrifice.
A belief that one life could be offered for something greater than the self. A moment where the boundary between life and death begins to lose its meaning. These monks walked willingly toward death, guided only by their faith.
Not in despair, but in the belief that devotion could transcend the body.
Their bodies remain today as silent witnesses to that belief.
For the modern world, their path may remain difficult to understand.
Because sometimes the greatest mystery is not death, but belief itself.